First of all, there's an old saying in the United States called charity begins at home. Does that mean that you do a lot of philanthropy and charity work at home as well?
Well, sure. Charity begins at home means your family. That's your first priority. It also means even when you start giving, to look around your neighborhood and see if there's people in need. And I think most people learn their first gifts are things that are nearby. As they get more involved, then they can think about the whole country, or even in some cases the whole world. But what you see is what you're going to understand the best.
In the United States, actually the highest percentage of giving goes to churches, and that the church by definition is a very local institution for people. So they give to their local school, they give to their what we call the United Way in the United States, which means local charities, and that's perfectly understandable, and it's a very good thing.
Well, Warren, the story goes that while you were younger, you were very stingy about wealth, about money. You were not that nice to your children, but things have changed. What changed you? You are now so generous. $1 million rings to you.
Yeah, well, the difference is, when I got started, I had no money to speak of. I mean, it was probably, I was probably 35 years of age by the time I had money that started to get beyond what the family might need. And then I felt that I would build it up faster than normal, so that in later years I could give really a very substantial amount of money, and that it would do more good net for society if I were giving billions of dollars when I was in my 70s than if I was giving millions of dollars when I was in my 60s. Now, we always gave some, but the significant philanthropy really started 5 years ago.
And Bill, have you always been this generous with your children?
Well, philanthropy's not. When we use the philanthropy, we're not talking about children. There's an amount you give your children that's actually damaging in terms of their self-motivation, how people look at them, their sense that they have to develop their own career and actually go out and work and make their way. And so my kids have had everything in terms of education and support, but they will have to earn their own way. Giving a child billions is both bad for them and for society.
过去2年中发生的金融危机告诉所有人，即使是在美国这样市场经济高度发达的国家，信贷出现危机所造成的后果也是难以承受的。2008年，曾经风光无限的投资银行或破产，或寻求政府救助，华尔街神话破灭。引发这场动荡的正是美国房地产市场出现的次贷危机。此前的10几年中，在宽松货币政策刺激下，所有美国人都相信房价会永远上涨，于是不断贷款买房，房价不断攀升。放贷人降低门槛，贷款人踏破门槛，信贷风险越积越高。但随着货币政策的收紧和油价的上涨，消费者还贷压力不断加大，违约风险从慢慢暴露到集中爆发。危机最终由信贷市场传导到资本市场，并迅速蔓延到了实体经济，甚至汽车制造业也风光不再。美国经济陷入衰退，投资大师巴菲特也未能幸免。2008年是他执掌哈撒韦公司的44年以来业绩最差的一年，账面价值损失高达115亿美元，惠誉甚至下调了公司评级。
Right now, at this very moment, it seems that the last thing China needs is money. There's a word going on in China that the worthless thing in China now is money. All of a sudden, you have the entire world's capital flooding into China. All of a sudden, everybody is a LP of a private equity fund. Even one of our finance reporters suddenly became the senior executive of a PE fund. So with so much liquidity pumping into China, are we running the risk of low returns on investment from your experiences? Is it a good thing or bad thing?
Well, money moves around based on what type of interest rate is being offered. And so this is a very self-adjusting thing. If there's not returns, then it'll go to other places. There's some things like getting into scientific research, that can use money and have these long-term impacts. Improving education systems. China still needs a lot of infrastructure, and so, trains, roads, things like that, they have a great deal of value. So a lot of that money is building the infrastructure of tomorrow.
The world votes with capital. Money moves where it thinks opportunity is. So I would say that it's a very high-class problem. If people are coming to you with lots of money. When I was very young, I was trying to attract money. When people gave me money, that was a vote of confidence in me. And basically, when money comes into a country, it's a vote of confidence in the country. Now, there can be problems with people having too high expectations, and so it isn't a totally unmixed blessing. But believe me, it's a lot better having people wanting to put money into your country than wanting to have them take it out.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, a very good problem to have.
Another big question for Chinese CEOs and businessmen, economists alike, is that the most fundamental question about credit, which was many believe is the very reason why we had the financial crisis. The post-crisis, what we're seeing right now is that governments around the world are printing bills to solve the crisis. They're creating even greater credit to solve the problem. And governments, banks, individuals in many countries around the world are probably more leveraged than pre-crisis levels. So what's the right attitude? What's the philosophical view of looking at credit? Should we one day get rid of it? Spending beyond your means, using tomorrow's money to address today's challenges?
Well, credit's very important, but it has to be used carefully. It is something that can be quite dangerous at the individual level, at the firm level, at the country level. When a young person wants to get a house in the United States, they almost never have the savings to do that. So they borrow. And if that's done at a reasonable price for the house, and their income goes up, everybody wins. Because they have that house for their family. Definitely, the overuse of credit was a central factor in the financial problems in the United States. It was taken too far. Now, ironically, once you have a financial crash and everybody's being very conservative, then the government, although it is glad there's more savings, it doesn't want the economy to fall too far, so it's actually pushing credit into the system, even though before credit was actually going too far. So getting this balance right is a very tough but critical problem. You can't get rid of credit. It would mess things up.
Credit is like fire. It's very useful. You can cook things with it. It keeps you warm and all of that, but it's also very dangerous. And some people can't handle credit well. Some countries can't handle credit well. And you saw much too much, we call it leverage, but call it credit in the American economy. The American public in the fall of 2008, American companies, American individuals, they all wanted to deleverage, pull back, and reduce credit. The United States government had to fill that void, so it was the only one whose credit really was good at that time, and it leveraged up. Now, the great danger with credit is not so much the person who borrows a little too much on their house or something. There's a self-correcting mechanism on that, but governments have printing presses, and it's very tempting to try and solve problems by just printing more and more money, and that's been a danger for millennia in the world. And that's the biggest danger of credit, is that essentially governments will use the power of the printing press to, in effect, make currency and money less valuable, and then that means the savings of their countrymen less valuable.
Both of you have massive investments in the markets. There's another big debate in China right now, which is, are markets predictable or not? There are different investment approaches. Some, like Warren, would sit on piles of cash for years without doing anything, and all of a sudden, during the crisis, he jumped in and he made good profits. But there are those who believe, because markets are fundamentally unpredictable, you can't time the markets, and you need to evenly distribute your investment in the markets. Which one of these approaches sounds better to you, Bill?
Well, you can't predict the market, but in the long run, the value of a firm in the market will tend to approximate its true economic value. And so Warren's brilliance is that he looks at a business and he can get a sense of what the profit stream of that business will be. Not exactly, but within a range. And so I know way less about markets than Warren does, and yeah, even I know they're unpredictable. The long run is to be smart about businesses, not really the market.
Yeah, your viewers should not attempt to time the market. I really don't know how to time the market. I may have had some cash available at a good time, but it wasn't because I didn't have lots of other investments all throughout Berkshire's history. So we really want to be in good businesses, and we don't worry about the timing. We do worry about the pricing. In other words, we want to buy businesses at intelligent prices. Now, there's sometimes when you get many more opportunities for that than at other times, but I am not sitting there when I buy a stock, even in the fall of 2008, and saying, I think it's going to go up next week or next month or even next year. I am thinking I'm getting a lot for my money. And if I get a lot for my money, the rest takes care of itself.
1993年，比尔·盖茨出访非洲，当地人民的极度贫困给他带来巨大震撼。第二年，在父亲的建议下，他拿出9400万美元建立威廉·盖茨基金会，这就是比尔及梅琳达·盖茨基金会的前身。10年后，盖茨基金会拥有的资产总额超过280亿美元，成为世界上最大的私募基金会。2006年，沃伦·巴菲特捐出价值约310亿美元的股票。英国《经济学人》杂志半开玩笑说，这显示巴菲特的确善于调拨资金，因为如果你是世界上第二富有的人，那么照看你的财富的最佳人选，无疑是那个唯比你更善于挣钱的人。而巴菲特带来的不仅仅是资金，更重要的是革命性的管理模式。在他的倡导之下，2006年10月，盖茨夫妇宣布基金会将采用双信托结构，也就是基金会负责对捐赠项目进行管理和运作，新成立基金会资产信托负责管理基金会的资产。这一新的运作模式使得盖茨基金会的资本运作更为便利，收入产出都很丰厚。2008年金融危机爆发，但是在资产信托公司的管理下，基金会的资产价值仍然增长了30%，同时当年的慈善支出在全美也名列第一。
And the way I see your calling for American rich guys to donate half of their wealth is like it's about social norms. Because, for instance, in the United States, everybody knows you need to pay a 15-20% tip. But so far, there's no norm about how much to give back to society for the rich community. So is that about creating a social norm, and so that people behind you, people who will be following, knows exactly what to do?
Well, there's two goals. One is that the people who are giving be smarter about it and learn from each other. We're also encouraging people to do it younger. Even if it's the same amount, if you're more vibrant, understanding what's going on in the world, you have perhaps some associates who helped you with your success, who you can draw in for it, the earlier you can have a bigger impact. And so I do think it'll affect people. We don't want a norm in the sense that it's a requirement. There'll still be people who choose not to do it. It should be completely the choice of the individual. But by having those examples and learning from each other, we do think people will choose to do more, and it'll be more enjoyable for them and more impactful.
If Bill and I had grown up in a society where no one gave money, our behavior would be different. I mean, you're affected by the behavior of those around you, and you're particularly affected by the behavior of the people you admire. And we have seen people we grew up reading about give substantial money. That's affected us. The other thing you find is that when people start doing it, they get further and further into it. They do more because they do it. We just see that time after time. Nobody does less after they start. Maybe some do the same amount, but nobody does less, and most do more. Their family starts seeing the rewards if they see people living better because of something they do. And I've never seen anybody that started it really that's backed off of it. And we've just seen it in the last 6 months. We've seen people that already were very generous, and as they've got involved in this, they've stepped up their efforts.
At first, it's going to be intimidating because the area you made your success, you had decades of knowledge, and you really know that you have a clear model of what goes on there. As you get into philanthropy, it's a different model. Does this scholarship really help these kids? Does this science research money really make a difference? Does this environmental cleanup thing, would that have happened even if I didn't do it? And so early on, you make a few mistakes. You want some other people to share and perhaps partner with you. But then when you see it, when you meet the child who got the health treatment, when you see the kid who got the scholarship, then it just pulls you in. And that's why we often see people expand. Yeah, a good example, something our foundation is involved with is how do you help teachers be much better teachers and yet have it be a system they enjoy working under. The government doesn't like to change the status quo, but if we come in with some money and some smart people to try something new, then the teachers get enthused. Now, many of those things we'll find aren't worth the trouble, but if we find one, then it could actually spread. And the $600 billion a year the U.S. government spends on early K through 12 education, pre-college education, would be much, much better spent. And so that's worth a lot if we can do it. And government alone would not have done those innovations.
And, of course, guys like you can always help elect the right president in the United States.
Well, philanthropy and politics are two completely different things. In fact, foundations are not ever involved in pushing for a candidate or something like that. They're there to develop expertise and programs, not politics.
But Warren, who outsourced some of his philanthropy work to the foundation, does involve yourself sometimes politically.
Oh, sometimes I'm involved, but that's as a private citizen. That is, but mixing philanthropy and politics is not a good idea.